Hello everyone, we are starting a series about free arbitrage pricing of financial derivatives. And this video is the first video to start with module 1, what actual derivative is. Because to actually understand the financial derivatives pricing, we have to understand the meaning of the word derivative. Derivative is a contract whose value comes from something else. That is the whole definition. Everything else in this series, formulas, pricing models, or hedging strategies, are the consequences of this one single sentence. So let's make sure we actually understand it. When it comes to a formal definition of the derivative, derivative is a financial instrument whose value depends on the underlying asset. The important word here is the depends. The derivative doesn't have value on its own, it has a value because something else does. So underlying asset has an arrow going to the derivative itself. So we must understand and always remember this specific arrow. The value flows in one direction. The stock doesn't care what the option is worth. The option cares enormously what the stock is worth, which makes this stock an underlying asset, not a derivative. Keep that arrow in your head. When we get to pricing in module 9, everything we do is chasing that arrow backwards. We know what the underlying does and we work out what the derivative must therefore be worth, which is the whole point of this course. So now let's test whether the definition actually means anything to you. 4 items here, and let's decide which one of these are derivatives, which are not. Southwest Airlines, a contract to buy jet fuel in 6 months at $6 a gallon, S&P 500 index, or a right to buy the Nasdaq 100 at a set price. So when we look at these 4, the first one should be simple, as we mentioned it earlier. This is just a stock. Stock is ownership. When you own a share of Southwest Airlines or any other company, you own a piece of Southwest Airlines. Its value doesn't derive from something else, it is itself the something else. So, as we said before, stock is an underlying asset, not a derivative. So, this is not going to be a derivative. And number 2, a contract to buy jet fuel in 6 months at $6 a gallon. That is a contract. Its value comes entirely from jet fuel. And jet fuel is actually worth what actually is worth in 6 months. If fuel goes to $8, this contract is valuable. You are locked in at 6. If fuel drops to 4, it's a liability, and the contract has no independent existence, it's pure derivation. So this is a derivative. So now let's look at the S&P 500 index. This is the one step people always get wrong. It is not a derivative. S&P 500 index is a number. It's a calculation. Take 500 companies, weighting them and producing a number. You cannot hold it, buy it, or sell it. And a derivative is a contract. It's an agreement between two parties. An index has no parties, no obligation, no counterparty. It's a measurement like a temperature reading. So index is a number, however, derivative is a contract. And that's how you can keep in mind what the derivative is. It's an agreement between two parties and it is a contract between those two parties. However, stock is an ownership, and S&P 500 or any other index is simply a produced number, not a contract. And when it comes to number 4, the right to buy the Nasdaq 100 at a set price, it is a derivative. Because you see, we mentioned it is the right to buy the Nasdaq 100 at a set price. Somebody is granting you the right to do something at a price. That is a contract. There are two parties to it, and its value depends completely on the Nasdaq 100 actually trades. That's literally the definition of derivative, because it's a contract and not just a number. And notice that 3 and 4 are about the same underlying, an index, and one is a derivative and one is not. So do not confuse these two. One is just a number, which is a just pure index. However, here, as we know that this could be an underlying asset, and we use Nasdaq 100 as an underlying asset, and we create a derivative contract with it. Now let's talk about the use cases. There are 4 main use cases, and it is important to memorize them to always remember. First of all, risk management. As we also know it, hedging. For example, an airline locks in fuel cost. As we know, airline's biggest cost is fuel, and it has no control over the price. So it buys a forward, locks the price in. It's not trying to make money on the contract, it's trying to make the cost predictable. That's exactly what hedging is. We are trying to manage a risk that could happen in the future. The next one is speculation, betting on a price move without owning the asset. You think oil is going up, you could buy oil, expensive, and where do you put it? Or you buy a contract that pays off if oil goes up. It's the same bet, far less capital. But it is speculation, which is not wanted by actuaries actually. And the next one is reduced transaction costs, such as S&P 500 exposure in one single trade. If you want to own like 500 companies, instead of owning 500 of them by every single stock, you purchase S&P 500, which is reduced transaction cost. And the next one is regulatory arbitrage, deferring capital gains, reducing accounting mismatches. Sometimes the economics of two positions are identical, but the tax treatment or the accounting treatment isn't. The derivatives let you get the exposure you want under the rules you prefer, deferring a capital gain, avoiding an accounting mismatch on balance sheet. The fourth one shows up in the exams precisely because it's the one most people forget and don't understand, so write it down and learn it by heart if you need to. Now, the last piece of this video. Every derivative transaction has 3 kinds of people looking at it. The first one is the end user. Corporations, investors, they use derivatives. This is the airline, the pension fund, someone who has an actual economic problem and buys derivatives to solve it. Another one, we have heard it from a lot of firms, the market makers, intermediary. They buy from sellers and sell it to buyers. Airlines will want to lock in fuel. Who takes the other side? Somebody has to, right? So the market maker's job isn't to have a view on fuel prices. It is to stand in the middle, buy from whoever is selling and sell to whoever is buying and earn the spread between the two. We'll spend all module 14 on how they manage the risk that creates. And lastly, the economic observer, regulators, researchers, the ones who study the market. Nobody in this category is trading, they are watching. Regulators deciding what's allowed. Academics working out whether the pricing models actually hold. The central banks worrying about systematic risk. So, let's remember and memorize the main 3 users: the end user, market makers, and economic observers. So let's now give an example. A bank buys an interest rate swap to protect itself from rate changes. Investment bank finds the counterparty to take the other side. A professor studies the transaction to research whether swaps actually reduce the risk. So, here, as you can see, we use all three of the perspectives in a single sentence. So, try to find it yourself and see who is the end user, who is the market maker, and economic observer. You can stop the video and look at it. And now I'm going to tell you that bank buying the swap is the end user. They have a problem, it bought it to solve. The investment bank finding the counterparty is a market maker. It didn't want the risk, it placed the specific risk. And professor here in this scenario is the economic observer. As you can see, they are researching the transaction, whether the swaps actually reduce the bank risk. Tool is to memorize before the next video the 4 use cases and 3 perspectives. They are straightforward marks when you see them on the exams for financial derivatives pricing classes, and more importantly, they are vocabulary for everything that follows. And one idea to actually understand, not to memorize. A derivative is a contract whose value comes from something else. They are not the something else like a stock or an index, but they are a contract between 2 parties. In the next video, we are going to talk about long and short positions, what it means to profit when a price falls, and why selling something you don't own is more dangerous than most people realize.